In 2021, a former children's entertainer, Michael Monks, was persistently soliciting girls to submit photographs of themselves in a semi-naked or naked state. Before sending videos of himself performing sex acts, Michael Monks requested that a 13-year-old lift her skirt and take a photo for him in his most recent vile messages. The 41-year-old was once again deceived by a covert police officer, despite having been previously apprehended by pedophile hunters. In 2017, the former DJ was apprehended after requesting oral intercourse from another decoy profile, who was also posing as a 13-year-old girl, and suggesting that they spend the night at a hotel or bed and breakfast. Today, the father, who used to work as a DJ and entertainer at children's parties, was once again in the dock at Liverpool Crown Court for similar offences. Ken Grant, the prosecutor, clarified that an undercover police officer was utilising the Kick Messenger app under the guise of a 13-year-old named Millie. On April 15, 2019, Monks identified as Anfield Guy and Mike Leon reached out to the decoy profile. The decoy informed the Monks that they were 13 years old immediately upon the commencement of the conversation. In response, the Monks inquired, "I am slightly older, are you currently in your bedroom?" Mr. Grant stated that the defendant was informed by Millie that she was 13 years old. However, this did not prevent the defendant from continuing the online conversation. The Monks submitted a photograph of themselves, and when the girl also submitted a photograph, the monk replied, "You look cute," and inquired, "Are you naughty?" Mr. Grant stated that he posed increasingly sexualized questions, such as "Have you ever been naughty with a boy or played with a willy?" Additionally, he inquired about his perception of a child, "Have you ever touched yourself below?" "I bet you have." The girl was sent 2 videos by the Monks in which he performed a sex act on himself. The Monks requested that the girl allow them to see him with his skirt raised, and they promised to provide additional footage. He was detained on April 17 at a builder's yard where he was employed and provided a no-comment interview. Attempting to incite a child in sexual activity and attempting to meet a child following sexual grooming were among the 9 sexual offences for which Monks was condemned for 2.5 years in May 2018. Monks has 7 previous convictions. Pedophile pursuers claimed that Monks had shed crocodile tears when they were apprehended. Following his parole, he was incarcerated for an additional 4 weeks after violating a sexual harm prevention order. Monks, of Richmond Terrace, Anfield, acknowledged that they violated a sexual harm prevention order by attempting to engage in sexual communication with a child and attempting to induce a child to view sexual activity. The judge was concerned that Monks posed a high risk of harm to children, and subsequently sentenced him to 2 years and 9 months in prison. He implemented a new order for the prevention of sexual harm that would last for 15 years. Monks are already required to sign the sex offenders register for the duration of their lives due to a prior conviction. After his abusers, Stuart Knowles and Andrew Lord, were sentenced to a combined 23 years for non-recent sexual offences committed against him as a child, a survivor has spoken out. In a poignant victim impact statement, the survivor, who is now a man, detailed the enduring effects of the childhood sexual abuse he endured at the hands of 2 men on his life, which he has carried into adulthood. He stated, "I am issuing this statement to elucidate the influence that the sexual abuse I endured as a child has had on my life. Stuart Knowles and Andrew Lord sexually assaulted me when I was 14. I was a juvenile at the time and was unable to comprehend, prevent, or adequately process the events that were occurring to me. I experienced fear, confusion, shame, and distress as a result of the abuse. The actions of both perpetrators have profoundly and permanently impacted my life. My emotional well-being, my sense of security, and my capacity to trust others were all impacted by the abuse. My experiences include anxiety, depression, panic attacks, nightmares, flashbacks, difficulties with relationships, and a loss of confidence. My childhood, trust, and existence have all been significantly impacted by this unwavering abuse. Rather than experiencing a sense of security and protection, I endured emotional distress and anxiety." Stuart Knowles, the 14th of November 1963, was convicted of 18 counts of penetrative and non-penetrative sexual activity with a male child between the ages of 13 and 15 at Manchester Crown Court after a trial. This occurred while he was the captain of the Boys Brigade in Wigan from 2005 to 2007. At the time, the survivor was a member of the Boys Brigade. Andrew Lord, the 30th of May 1964, was convicted of 4 counts of penetrative sexual activity between 2005 and 2007. Lord was persuaded to participate in a threesome with Knowles and the survivor in the store cupboard of a primary school in Wigan. The Boys' Brigade is not associated with the Lord. The survivor continued, "The impact persisted as I aged. I have been profoundly traumatized by the horrific events that occurred when I should have been in the trust and care of someone, as have other members of my family. I have also struggled with suicide. These experiences have had an impact on my mental health, daily life, self-esteem, and relationships. There have been instances in which the abuse has impeded my ability to work, study, maintain relationships, or appreciate life in the manner that I would have preferred. One of the most significant repercussions has been my desire to end my life as a result of the torture I endured and the difficulty I encountered in maintaining a somewhat stable life as a result of the terror I encountered. I was unable to continue to manage this situation. The abuse altered my perspective on the world and myself. It has impacted my capacity to feel secure, trust others, and navigate life without the weight of the events that transpired. Measurement of the injury caused by the actions of both perpetrators is not solely dependent on the abuse itself. Long after the abuse concluded, the consequences have persisted and continue to influence my life to this day. I wish for the court to comprehend that the abuse was not a single incident that concluded upon its cessation. Its repercussions have been enduring and continue to influence my emotional well-being, relationships, and quality of life. I make this statement with the utmost honesty and based on my personal experiences, he additionally stated. Knowles and Lord were sentenced on Friday, July 24, 2026, at Manchester Crown Court for sex offences against a minor between the ages of 13 and 15. Rylands Street, Wigan resident Stuart Knowles, the 14th of November 1963, was sentenced to 16 years in prison. Andrew Lord, of Vicarage Road, Oral, was sentenced to 7 years in prison on May 30, 1964. In 2021, a woman who was incarcerated for causing severe physical harm to a 6-month-old infant was released from prison, relocated to Northampton, and is currently active on Facebook. In 2019, Kim Frost, who was 37 years old at the time, of Northampton, entered a plea of guilty to Category A child cruelty and neglect, the most severe form of the offence. In February 2018, the victim sustained injuries that were so severe that doctors compared them to those that could be sustained in a road traffic collision or a fall from a first-floor window. In court, Frost was described as being in a toxic relationship with a man at the time of the events. It was evident from a series of harrowing texts and recordings she sent him that she abused the child to attract his attention, which ultimately led him to contact the police. The infant sustained a severe injury that resulted in multiple skull fractures and a hematoma, which is a brain swelling, as a consequence of the extreme abuse. The child has now fully recovered. Frost was sentenced to 4 years in prison, however, he was released after serving 2 years. In 2021, a judge had previously observed some of the most appalling indecent images of children that a worker at a Stroud Tire company had downloaded. Jonathan Neat, then 37, of Nailsworth, pleaded guilty to 3 counts of creating over 400 indecent images of children, including infants, between June 2019 and May 2020. Prosecutor Ian Fenny stated at Gloucester Crown Court today, Friday, that the most disturbing images depicted penetrative sexual activity. Judge Ian Laurie QC stated, "The images are revolting. Some of this material is the most appalling I have ever encountered, or at least read about." The judge informed Neat that his attention to the depraved images had exacerbated the life-altering suffering and misery of the juvenile victims of the sex crimes depicted in them. According to prosecutor Ian Fenny, the police visited Neat's workplace. They confiscated his phones and computers after being informed of his misconduct during an investigation into the New Zealand cloud system. The defendant claims that he first became aware of this material as a consequence of chat rooms with others, according to prosecutor Ian Fenny. His devices contained search requests, and the search terms he employed are self-evident. His defense informed the court that Neat's new partner had been remarkably supportive of him and had served as his supervisor when he had access to his son. Additionally, the entire family, including his parents, had been very supportive of him. Judge Laurie imposed a sentence of 16 months in prison, suspended for 2 years, and required Neat to complete 200 hours of unpaid work, pay £1,000 in costs, and pay a £140 surcharge. Additionally, He mandated that NEET participate in 40 sessions of an accredited sex offender program and 30 days of rehabilitation activities. NEET was also subjected to a 10-year sexual harm prevention order and was placed on the sex offender register for 5 years. On September 10, he was instructed to appear in court for a judicial review of his progress on the order. In 2021, a 17-year sentence was imposed on a dangerous pedophile teacher who employed online alter egos to deceive at least 27 boys into filming themselves performing sex acts. Dean Davidson, then 38, has admitted to 18 sexual offenses over the course of a decade. These offenses include the possession of indecent images of children, the online exploitation of young teenagers, and the indecent touching of boys. One of the defendant's victims stated that he taught at numerous schools in the northeast of England and posed as a good-looking blonde girl online. The defendant's address is Brockwood Court, Ashington, Northumberland. Newcastle Crown Court was informed that he employed a male alter ego contingent upon the sexual orientation of his victims. As statements from 27 victims were heard during the sentencing hearing, Davidson held his head in his hands. According to Andrew Epsley, the prosecutor, Davidson was a dangerous offender who deceived some of his victims, who are now adults, after contacting them on social media. In certain instances, he assumed the identity of an elderly woman who was sexually adventurous and coerced them into engaging in sexual activities on camera. The court was informed that Davidson recorded the videos without their consent. The victim only became aware of the deception when detectives approached him and presented him with a video of himself performing sex acts as a child around the age of 13. Officers had recovered the video from Davidson's electronic devices. The victim stated, "I was initially attracted to a girl who was demonstrating affection toward me at a young age. It had been informal, amicable, and occasionally sexual over the years. I am feeling deceived and misled." Another victim reported experiencing anxiety in public due to the possibility that Davidson had shared videos of him as a young teen, and he also felt violated. Another individual stated that he had made online friends with a woman whom he believed to be a female. She requested that he participate in unusual activities that he would never consider doing as an adult. He was sentenced to 17 years in prison by Judge Sarah Mallett, with an additional 6 years of imprisonment. Additionally, an indefinite sexual harm prevention order, SHPO, was issued to Davidson, which will impose restrictions on his release from prison and require him to sign the sex offenders register for the duration of his life. Additionally, he was prohibited from working with children. Several of his victims have described their lives as a result, which are in ruins, she said in reference to his victims. In 2021, a pedophile who attempted to meet with an individual whom he believed to be a 12-year-old boy was incarcerated. Macaulay Webb had been communicating with an undercover police officer who was assuming the identity of a 12-year-old boy on the dating and networking app Grindr and WhatsApp before he attempted to meet him. The 24-year-old reportedly requested that the minor become his boyfriend and inquired as to whether he would kiss him at Cardiff Crown Court. On May 14, 2019, Joshua Sculler, the prosecutor, stated that Webb liked a Grindr profile named Welsh Romeo and began communicating with the undercover police officer. The two subsequently exchanged phone numbers, and their conversation transitioned to WhatsApp. A court heard that Webb was informed of the boy's age at the outset of the conversation, that he was 12 years old and nearly 13. Webb asked the boy to become his boyfriend, and whether he would kiss him, before being asked if they could perform oral sex on each other. On May 18, Webb attempted to meet the minor in the car park of the Morrison's supermarket in Cwmbran. However, he was apprehended by the police, who confiscated his mobile phone. Webb, a resident of Gaya Vale, Newport, acknowledged that he attempted to engage in sexual activity with a child and to meet a child after sexual grooming. The court also learned that he has 11 prior convictions for 27 offenses, including the possession of indecent images of children. Judge Richard Williams informed Webb that the offense was a serious escalation in your pedophilia. He stated, "I acknowledge that this was an attempt and that the child was a fictional character. Although this mitigates the harm inflicted, it does not mitigate the harm that was intended. This is a significant escalation in your pedophilia. You have been unsuccessful in addressing your sexual appetite or offending behavior. You do carry a substantial danger of causing severe harm." Webb was sentenced to an 8-year extended sentence, which consisted of a 4-year custodial sentence and a 4-year extended license period. After being convicted of sexual and misconduct offenses in connection with strip searches, a former police inspector, Gerard Hutchings, has been sentenced to 10 years in prison. Gerard Hutchings was sentenced at Bristol Crown Court today, Friday, July 24. While at the police station to receive a warning or reprimand for minor offenses, the 67-year-old subjected 18 male victims to unwarranted strip searches. Additionally, during these procedures, he sexually violated a number of them. The offenses were committed at stations in Hampshire, including those in the New Forest and the northern region of the county, between 1999 and 2007. At the time, the victims were between the ages of 17 and 31. Hutchings, of Wingrove Road, Ashurst, denied that any sexual offense occurred and denied 11 charges, including indecent assault and causing an individual to engage in sexual activity without their consent. Following a trial in March of this year, a jury at Bristol Crown Court found him guilty of all charges. He had previously confessed to 17 counts of misconduct in public office during a previous hearing. Hutching was incarcerated for a total of 10 years at the same court today, Friday, July 24. Upon his release, he will be subject to lifelong notification obligations.